to realize that anytime you want, you can go to a little rural village in Europe and be welcomed like a long-lost relative. I mean it. The people there will greet you with smiles and a kiss on both cheeks. The older women will be wearing black scarves on their heads and perhaps aprons if they're cooking and rubber boots if they're milking the cows. Most men will have straw hats on their heads and rough hands from farming. They'll invite you into their homes for coffee and fresh baked bread and homemade butter and jam. Most likely their stoves will burn wood, and in some cases their chimneys will lead directly into the attic where meat will be smoking above your head. The first time you see it, you'll think the house is on fire because smoke will be slowly seeping out through the cracks in the clay tiles of the roofs. And you'll be made to feel like an honored guest because you are. As a matter of fact, you're more than that. You are a partner in freedom's unfolding. No matter how you arrive, it will have taken you effort to get there. Over bumpy, dusty dirt roads winding through the Carpathian Mountains. So your hosts will offer you some of their best plum schnapps called Palinka, homemade. It will ease your nerves and probably put hair on your chest. And perhaps they'll offer you some wine if they have some from grapes that they grew and smashed themselves. And as you walk around the village, you'll see things that you've only read about in books and thought had died out a long time ago in Europe. Eventually, you'll wind your way to the center of the village because all roads, as I said, lead to the center of the village. And that's when you'll arrive at a 600-plus-year-old little white church. If you look closely, you'll see in the courtyard of the church the remains of an old Roman altar to the god Jupiter from the 3rd century. The remains have been incorporated into the church edifice, which is at the center of this humble and charming village in which you are an honored guest. When you walk into the sanctuary of the church, on the ceiling you'll find painted wood panels with words in a language that's so ancient and so rare that because of them, the entire village has been deemed a place of international historic importance. In the 16th century, after some invading Turks burned the inside of the church, the village rebuilt the ceiling with these panels. Many panels have Latin words on them, except for one very special panel that has an ancient Hungarian script, pre-Hungarian script, that's even a pre-Latin script that goes back more closely related to Egyptian writings, ancient Egyptian writings, than anything we know now in the European tradition. It's known as Runic writing or runes. By the 16th century, this language would have been used only as a kind of a secret code if you wanted to write something that to others who might understand it, but that would not be possible for people to read it widely. What is written on this one panel are the words, "God is one." Apparently, being a Unitarian, even back then, was controversial and dangerous. But this writing on this piece, on this panel, is something that makes this entire church and village very special, and people travel from all over the world to see it. Now, you'll still be getting used to how nice the people are and how great it feels to be treated like family, especially when you're this far away from home. But it's because you're visiting our partner church in Enlaka in Transylvania. The entire village now has 120 people, all of them Unitarian. One of those people, our new minister, of this ancient church, is with us today. We've had a great relationship with her predecessor, the Reverend Lajos Dancs, who came here a few times over the past 2 decades as this church developed this wonderful relationship across the Atlantic. Reverend Timmy, as she has invited us to call her, is 30 years old. She has a 3-year-old daughter and a husband back in Enlaka, and a village who care very much about us and our connection. You may have received a Christmas ornament on Christmas Eve as you were leaving the church that was made from one of the children from our partner church. It's a wonderful relationship that we look forward to continuing in the years to come now with you as our new partner church minister. So after we sing the first verse of hymn number 159, which is considered the partner church anthem, the anthem of the churches that are partnered across the ocean. After that, we'll hear some words from Reverend Timea Nagy-Mátéfi.
Thank you for the beautiful song, and thank you, Tom. Thank you, it was really beautiful. It sounds great. Well, raise your hand if you ever heard about Transylvania. Great. How about Enlaka? Great. I hope your first talk is not about Dracula, Hotel Transylvania, or vampires. There are none of them. Our story began a couple of 100 years ago when in Western Europe, thousands of lives were taken away by Inquisition. In those inhuman times, there was a tiny land in Eastern Europe, an island of religious freedom, where hundreds of religious refugees found shelter under the umbrella of the Transylvanian welcoming tolerance. From ancient times, Transylvania was the place where different cultures, different nations, like Hungarians, Romanians, and Germans, lived together, mostly peacefully. During the Reformation era, these cultures adopted different religious views. Beside the dominant Catholic Church, there was Calvinism, Lutheran evangelism, and a radical wing of the Reformation, anti-Trinitarianism, or what was later called Unitarianism. To make a long story short, in January 1568, in city of Torda, there was a national council known as the Diet of Torda, where the nobles had debates for over a week about religious matters, and at the end of it, they came to an agreement. 551 years ago, something special happened in these isolated parts of the world. Something which many cultures and nations are still struggling with today. Mostly, thanks to our first bishop, David Ferenc, the council agreed to formulate a law which guarantees religious freedom for all. The preachers should everywhere preach the gospel according to his own belief, and the community may accept it or not. Nobody should compel it, as this would not ease anybody's soul. But the community should have the right to keep such a preacher whose teaching it likes and accepts. None of the religious authorities or others are allowed to do any harm to the preacher. No one should be hurt for his religion. Nobody is allowed to threaten anybody with prison or with expelling him from his place of teaching. For faith is a gift of God. The entire community of Enlaka, your partner congregation, decided at this point, in the middle of the 16th century, to convert from the Catholicism to the Unitarianism, and their church, which was built in the 15th century, became the place of Unitarian sermons. Seeing this spreading tree behind me, I am reminded of the linden tree in the garden of our church, which is more than 500 years old. And it guards the peace of the people from Enlaka and the joy, sorrows, and secrets of the thousands of visitors who arrive to our village. That graceful linden tree, suggesting wisdom and power, could be the symbol of our community, like this tree of yours. Tree, fruit tree, tree of life, family tree. A tree is a symbol of life, of the world, of family, community, and it has been used in many forms by artists since ancient times. The tree of life is one of the most sacred and ancient symbols of the Hungarian people, and its power has left an indelible mark in the souls of Hungarian people. Its roots are diversified. Its branches stretch toward the sky. The tree of life is a symbol representing the most complex mind. It symbolizes the connection among the lower, the middle, and the upper world. It alludes to life and death, to eternal advancement and growth, to continuous rejuvenation. It is the link of the past, present, and future. When somebody decides to research their family history, then they draw their family tree. This is a very complex, exciting, and tiring task, because beyond the names, birth, and death dates, one will come across unexpected information as well. Malcolm X said, "Just a tree without roots is dead. A people without history or cultural roots become a dead people." We have to know our past, the past of our family and community, in order to know who we are, where we come from, what kind of people our ancestors were, and what we carry on from their lives into ours. Therefore, we have to know the trees and their fruits, because God sent every one of us here with a certain task. According to our faith, every human being is good and born with a true and beautiful soul. But this immaculate soul begins rooting in this earthly life and encounters failings, faults, and transgressions. However, there is an intention of being good in every one of us, and this stands for the decaying branches of our trees. The fact that we are here, you and me, is the sacrifice of many generations living before us. The tree of life of our family is rooted deeply in the centuries laid by our ancestors. When I'm thinking about our partnership, the image of these trees comes to my mind. It is pretty obvious that in our common tree, we, Transylvanian, are the roots and the trunk, and you, American Unitarian Universalists, are the wide-spreading greenery. There are 551 annual rings in the trunk, and we, the trunk and roots, are making sure that we have a strong traditional, theological, and historical basis. So the winds of our times will not annihilate us. And your part of our mission is to reach the sky in as many branches as possible and to bring shelter to the many birds that will fly on. The circulatory system of this tree is kept alive by our love, belief, tolerance, humanity, compassion, consciousness, and free will. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again, said Sojourner Truth. That's my call too. That's why I am minister in my small congregation in Enlaka in Transylvania. I'm really grateful to be here as we start a new period in our common history. Last year, we had many celebrations in the name of the 415th anniversary in Transylvania. But we aspire for a future which begins with this year. The 451st year begins with you and with me, with Unitarian people in Tulsa and Enlaka, with our common visions. Our faith, hope, and sisterhood, brotherhood does not know any border. It's love beyond belief. I appreciate your warm welcome. Thank you for this journey through the time. And I have a blessing, a benediction, which is in our homes, in a plate in every Transylvania family's wall. Where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no need. Amen.
Reverend Timea, your English is isn't her English fantastic for someone who first time to come to the United States and to be here, and just she said when she came a few weeks ago to Chicago to the seminary that she could barely understand people. It took her so long to think of a sentence before she could talk that they were already on to something else, and so it's just incredible how much you've just embraced the language and how good your English is. I want to just add one little, what happened next. She mentioned David Ferenc in 1568, who became the first Unitarian leader. And at the time of this Diet of Torda that she talked about, which created the Edict of Torda, which was the first declaration of religious freedom in Europe, 1568, well, the king at the time was King John Sigismund. He was so convinced by Reverend David Ferenc that he became a Unitarian. And that's when across Transylvania, many, many churches and many, many communities became Unitarian. But they did so with this Edict of Toleration. So many, at the time when a king or the leader of a nation became a religion, they forced everybody to take on their faith. He didn't do that. So I like to think the one time, we've had one monarch, a Unitarian monarch in history so far, and he used that power to allow freedom and tolerance to exist. People left Poland, Italy, and other places to come to Transylvania. They left their nation because of their beliefs, because they wanted to be in a place where they could believe. He only lived 3 years, unfortunately, and so when he died, the next king, King Stefan, was Catholic, and fortunately, with the pressure from all the bishops, he allowed the Edict of Toleration to continue, but only for the 4 churches that were already included. So there was a new law that was passed that didn't allow for what they called innovation. It was a penalty of death for innovation. Well, you can imagine how Reverend David Ferenc felt about this new law. He continued to use his pulpit to preach for continued ideas of progress and understanding, and he used reason and science to interpret the Bible. And the people, even within his own church, became so afraid that his preaching was going to cause their entire church to be disbanded by the king, that they supported him being put into prison for life it was a dungeon, in fact. This is Transylvania, remember. And he was put in a dungeon in a town of Deva, in the bottom of the castle of Deva in 1579. And he died. When he died, they found scratched into the wall of his cell these words: "Neither the sword of popes, nor the cross, nor the image of death, nothing will halt the march of truth." That is the tradition in which we stand. And I think on this day, as we remember that history, let us also remember that sometimes when somebody moves towards the truth that they feel is right in their own hearts, the people turn on them, even their own people. We think of Martin Luther King, who we celebrated recently, when he came out in Riverside Church and preached one of his last sermons, and he said, "I will no longer ever speak on the subject of race without also speaking on the subjects of class and militarism at the same time." He lost a lot of friends, and people turned on him, and some would say that was the cause of his assassination. The fact that he wanted to combine race, class, and the American militarism around the world, all in one big movement, which, had he been successful, would have changed this country. People turned on him. People turned on David Ferenc. People turn on us when we continue to move forward sometimes in freedom towards truth as we understand it. I know that, even in this congregation, as we have changed in different ways over the years, there have been broken relationships, and people who've turned away and left the congregation over some of the changes and innovations that we've made here. And so I ask you on this Sunday morning to think of ways in your life when you have sacrificed. Maybe you've lost friends, maybe you've lost a family member, maybe you've lost a job because of your commitment to integrity and truth as you understand it. It's not easy, this tradition that we stand in, but it is a proud tradition, and I'm glad to be in it. And Reverend Timea, I'm glad to be in it with you. You are the future, and we're so thankful that you're with us this morning. Let us join in singing one more time the first verse of hymn number 159.
We're so happy you're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256 or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
and be a blessing.